Someone's telling you a story, and it sounds pretty reasonable, but something just feels off, or your gut's telling you there's something not quite right, but you're stuck. If you speak up, you risk tension. If you stay quiet, it feels like you're betraying your own intelligence. Most people fall into one of two camps. 1. Stay silent to keep the peace. 2. Jump straight into confrontation, and boom, things explode. But neither feels truly wise. The Stoics, ancient philosophers who lived through politics, betrayal, and deception, discovered a third way. No accusations, no anger, just the right question, and the truth reveals itself. Today, I'm going to share with you 8 questions used by those who practiced Stoicism to expose the truth without losing your calm, grounded presence. If you've ever been blindsided by a fake story, or you simply want to protect yourself with wisdom instead of reacting on impulse, then you're exactly where you need to be. Hit that subscribe. Let's build Stoic clarity together. Let's begin. The truth starts to show when you change the angle of the story. Have you ever sat in an old diner across from someone you used to be really close to, and suddenly realized they're telling you the same story, maybe for the 3rd, 4th time, with the exact same tone, the same expressions, every detail lined up perfectly, as if they pulled it from a movie script? In that moment, you don't need to blurt out, "Are you lying to me?" You can just smile, slowly put your chopsticks down, and gently ask, "Hey, tell me the story again, but this time, start from after you left the restaurant." Double quotes, boom. If they're telling the truth, they won't flinch, because truth is a living memory. You can rewind it, fast forward it, turn left, turn right. It's still you, still that breathing moment from real life. But a lie, it's just a rehearsed line. And the second you ask them to switch camera angles, the rhythm starts to break. They hesitate. They lose the logic, because now they've lost their grip on the script version they had playing in their head. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change, for it is the truth I seek." And that's the beauty of Stoicism. You don't need to win. You just need to uncover the truth. And sometimes, the path to truth is simply changing the angle of the story. Like sunlight, if you want to see if something's real, look at it under a different light, from a different side. And if it disappears, it was never the truth. It was an illusion. Now, this might sound like a small trick, just some dinner table test, but really it's a powerful psychological tool. Because in life, you won't just meet liars, you'll also meet yourself, the version of you that tells stories to yourself, just so you can feel okay. And sometimes, asking yourself, "Can I retell this story?" starting from a different point, is how you find out whether you're healing or just hiding. In sessions treating post-traumatic stress disorder, many therapists ask patients to retell their trauma, but not in the same old sequence. They start in the middle, in places that seem pointless, and then the memory starts breaking open, more real, more vivid, more painful, but also closer to healing. And that's the real message here. A brave person isn't the one who tells a perfect story. It's the one who dares to retell it from a different point of view. To shift perspective is to face it. To face it is the first step to freedom. And before you nod along and take this all in, let me ask you something right before this. What were you doing? The continuity of truth and the silence of a lie. That afternoon, the sun was setting. The girl walked into the house, later than usual, still clutching her book like a shield. Her mother didn't yell, didn't interrogate. She just sighed gently and asked, "So, before you went to the library, what were you doing?" Silence, but not the kind of silence that says "I'm thinking about how to say this." More like the kind where she's rewinding a script in her head. Those few seconds, they lasted longer than the entire walk home. Because a person telling the truth lives moment by moment, but someone lying usually only remembers the middle and the end. They can build the climax, but they forget the beginning. It's like filming a movie. You might be able to describe the epic fight scene, the dramatic soundtrack, but if someone asks, "How did that scene start?" you stumble. You lose the flow. Epictetus once said, "First, learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." And that applies, even in silence, because silence isn't just the space between words. Sometimes it's the space between truth and fabrication. Now imagine that same situation, but it's you. You tell your boss you were emailing the client, but then he asks, "What about before that? What were you doing when the client first sent their email?" You freeze, because you hadn't planned on sharing that part. You didn't think the question would reach that far back, and that's where the cracks in continuity start to show. This isn't about some trick to catch someone lying. It's a way to check in with yourself, because sometimes we tell ourselves half-true stories just to feel better or more right. We skip the beginning, where fear lives, where laziness hides, where unresolved pain quietly sits. In security interrogations, investigators don't usually ask, "What did you do?" They ask, "What were you doing before you even thought of doing that?" Gives because real actions have flow. Gives fake ones have gaps. The message here isn't, "Don't lie." It's, live in a way where you don't have to remember so much. If you live honestly, your memory becomes a stream, not a script. And sometimes, if you want to know who's living truthfully, all you need to ask is, "What were you doing before that?" That one simple question is a way to measure the connection between someone's actions and their soul. And if you're really paying attention, you'll notice when someone needs time to pull up the script. They might be running from themselves, but don't jump to conclusions, because sometimes silence doesn't mean they're lying. It means they're remembering. They're reaching back, trying to touch something they forgot or buried. So, ask one more question, not to accuse, but to understand more deeply. How did you feel at that moment? Emotions can't be faked. And the question that pulls the truth to the surface: the family dinner. The rice is still warm, but the air feels a little cold. He just got home. Tired voice. Got stuck at the office till late. No one asked anything else. But you, maybe out of curiosity, maybe because you really care, you blurt out, "How did you feel at that moment?" Just one simple question, but it cuts deep. And the first reaction? A quick furrow of the brow. A flat answer, just tired, I guess. Just that, tired? You were stuck at the office until 11 p.m. Deadlines piling up, boss on edge, co-workers quiet, your family waiting for you at home, and all you felt was tired. Real emotions are never that tidy. They don't fit inside one word. They come as a chain reaction, like, "I felt drained, but couldn't say it. I was bitter, but kept smiling. I glanced at the clock and felt this heaviness in my chest." Epictetus once said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things." And emotions, they're where you can't lie to yourself. If someone remembers the details of how they felt, they lived it. If all they say is some cliche like "I was just tired," maybe they haven't fully faced it, or maybe they just don't want to let you into that space. I remember once, I lied to my ex, told her I'm working late, but really, I was sitting alone in my car, engine off, watching the rain hit the windshield. And in that moment, it wasn't sad or tired. It was that feeling of not knowing what the hell I was doing with my life. If she had asked, "How did you feel at that moment?" I probably would have hesitated, not because I wanted to hide something, but because there wasn't a word that fit. And that right there is what makes it real. Real emotions are messy, contradictory, hard to name. Someone living truthfully might say, "I felt totally alone, even in a room full of people. I felt like a ghost, like no one needed me. I was sitting there, but it felt like I was floating away from myself. In therapy, the therapist doesn't start by asking, "What happened?" They ask, "What did you feel when it happened?" Because emotion is evidence that doesn't lie. It's the one thing people can't copy-paste. The story that can be staged, the plot borrowed, but the emotion, if you haven't felt it, it's always empty. So next time someone's sharing something important, don't ask, "Then what happened?" Ask, "How did you feel at that moment?" Because their answer will tell you, did they actually live through that moment, or are they just replaying a mental clip? And if you want to go even deeper, more honest, more human, there's a question that hits even harder. If that had happened to me, how do you think I would have felt? If it were me, how do you think I would have felt? It's morning. The office still smells faintly of coffee and sleep. You're halfway through opening your inbox when a coworker strolls by, half smiling, and casually drops, "Oh, by the way, I already apologized to the boss for that thing yesterday. Said it on your behalf. All good." You nod and smile, but not the thank you kind of smile. More like the "I'm thinking this through" kind of smile. And then you ask, "If you were me in that situation, how do you think I would have felt?" Boom. The whole atmosphere shifts. It's no longer just someone speaking on your behalf. Now it's, "Do you even understand me enough to stand in my place?" See, empathy isn't about speaking for someone. It's about feeling for them. Feeling the way they might tremble, worry, feel ashamed, angry, or hurt. And if you can't feel that, you probably shouldn't represent them. Stoicism isn't about being emotionless. Seneca once wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity. No one falls apart because of bad luck, unless they were lulled into comfort by things seeming fine on the surface." And in the workplace, there's a dangerous kind of surface level. Everything's fine. People apologizing for each other, stepping in, making decisions on behalf of others, but never asking, "If it were you, how would you feel?" I remember the first time I got unfairly scolded by my boss. A well-meaning coworker spoke up for me. He didn't mean to do it, but no one asked me, "Did that feel bad? Do you want to speak up for yourself?" And I remember that exact feeling, like my voice was taken from me, even though I was the one being called out. In leadership and team development programs, they don't teach you to handle things for others. They teach you, ask before acting, step into their shoes before stepping forward. And that question, "If it were me, how do you think I would have felt?" is a kind of litmus test. If the person truly cares, they'll pause, think, and answer with honesty. I think you might have felt powerless, maybe uncomfortable, because you didn't get to speak for yourself. But if they deflect, mumble, change the subject, well, you already know. They weren't really standing up for you. They were just trying to get it over with. Because empathy isn't the ability to speak for others. It's the willingness to step into the uncomfortable, to feel the things someone else didn't have the courage or the space to say out loud. And if someone does answer you truthfully, ask one more question. Who witnessed that moment? Because in the end, the truth doesn't always sit in the words we speak. Sometimes, it lives in the eyes of the person who stood nearby, the one who said nothing, but saw everything. The truth has witnesses. Lies do not. It's the weekend. The coffee shop is as busy as ever, the clink of cups, a soft jazz track playing in the background, and stories diluted in the hum of grinding beans. He takes a sip of his Americano, then begins. The meeting with the boss on Friday. It was tense, like a wire about to snap. He was spitting out words, sharp and slow. The whole room held its breath. You listen, you nod, you don't interrupt. You just wait for him to finish, then gently ask, "Was anyone else there with you?" Just one question, a question that sounds harmless, like small talk. But instantly, you notice the shift. He starts naming a few people, but it's like he's dragging scraps of memory from somewhere distant. Not sure, not fluid, not real. Because real events always have witnesses, real people, real names, real reactions. A lie, it lives in social empty space, a zone where no one can confirm, no one saw, no one heard. It's a story with no camera, no third person, no eyes watching. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your word, to lose your self-respect, to hate any man, to suspect, to curse, to act the hypocrite, and sometimes all it takes is asking, who is there, to pull the truth out of the fog of fiction." I remember once, I lied to my dad, told him, "I'm staying late, group project meeting." He just looked at me and asked, "Who else is going?" Do I know them? My throat tightened. Because, in truth, I was going alone. And that lie only existed because I believed no one would ask beyond the surface. In investigative psychology, they call this the third-party verification trap. When someone's telling a story, just ask, who was there? How did they react? What did they say? Someone telling the truth remembers not just actions, but facial expressions, glances, even the lighting in the room. But someone fabricating gets stuck because they only wrote the main scene. They forgot to create the side characters. And that's the message. If a story can't survive in a space with real people in it, it deserves to be questioned, because the truth is never alone. So next time someone tells you something important, just ask, casually, kindly, was anyone else there when that happened? And if they hesitate, move to a sharper question, one that's not about evidence, but about motive. What made you decide to do that? The real reason is never vague. The meeting room is quiet. The only sound is the soft hum of the AC. You're interviewing a candidate for a mid-level management role. Clean resume, impressive track record, and he looks you in the eye, bright eyes, but something about them doesn't feel real. You ask, so, why did you leave your previous job? Especially when you were clearly at the top of your game. He exhales lightly, eyes drifting off into that philosophical gaze kind of look, then says, I just felt like I needed a change, wanted to follow my passion, find a new sense of purpose. Sounds okay, nice, polished, but hollow. You pause, you don't jot anything down yet. Then you follow up, not sharply, not to corner him, just like two people having a conversation. So what exactly made you decide to do that? And that's when the air in the room starts to shift. He begins repeating some of the same vague phrases. No details, no context, no sleepless nights, no final conversation with his boss, no resignation email, no sense of inner conflict about leaving the team. Because a real reason always comes with struggle. It's never just an Instagram quote. It's nights you can't sleep. It's sitting in your car, resignation letter in hand, not ready to walk in. It's that last look from your co-worker, part regret, part understanding. Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. But in order to do what you have to do, you've got to go through what you don't want to face. I remember an old friend quit his job in banking, not to follow his passion, like people love to say, but because one day he stared at the payroll sheet and realized, I'm being paid to forget who I am. He made the decision to quit. After 8 months drowning in doubt, fear, and feeling totally lost, and when he told the story, he remembered everything, even the smell of the coffee. That last morning at the office. That was a real reason. Someone telling the truth has details. Someone making it up only has ideals. Because lies don't have a process. They're just a destination with no road leading there. So if you want to know whether a story is real, don't ask, what did you do? Ask, what made you decide to do that? Their answer will tell you, was this a choice or just a line to explain a quiet escape? But you can go even deeper, not from their point of view, from the point of view of an outsider. And here's the question that flips the whole table. If you were someone else, hearing this story, what part would be the hardest to believe? Self-checking your own truth. It's rush hour. You're packed inside the subway car, one hand gripping the metal bar, ears tuned in as the friend next to you starts telling a story about a small accident. The car in front stopped suddenly. I couldn't swerve in time, tapped it a bit, and ended up late for work. On the surface, nothing sounds off, but something doesn't quite line up. The way he tells it, it's like he's moving through fog. No screeching brakes, no racing heartbeat, none of that jolt of panic you'd expect when someone's just had even a minor accident. You don't accuse him of anything. You just turn slightly, look him in the eye, and ask, if you were someone else hearing this story, what part do you think they'd find the hardest to believe? Boom, he freezes, gives an awkward chuckle, then starts tweaking the story a bit. Well, actually, it was kind of hectic. Maybe the car didn't exactly brake that hard. I guess I was a little distracted. You don't need any more proof. Just that moment, that instinct to self-correct is enough. Because people who are telling the truth always know which part of their story sounds weak, and they can explain it. But liars, they don't know what to patch up first, because they've never tested their own logic. Before speaking, Seneca once wrote, "Truth is consistent. Lies are patchwork." And this question, it's like holding up a mirror to the storyteller, letting them see themselves from the outside and if they dodge the reflection, you already know what kind of story you're listening to. I've been there too. Once, I told my ex-girlfriend, I'm working overtime this weekend. She didn't grill me. She just asked, if I were the one hearing this story, what part would seem the least believable to me? I froze, the whole script in my head unraveled, and I knew my mouth was running faster than my brain could think. In professional interrogation training, they use this exact question. If someone else heard your story, where would they doubt it? It forces the storyteller to step outside of themselves, to examine the narrative through an objective lens. Someone telling the truth can spot the blurry parts. Someone fabricating will just try to blur it even more. And most importantly, this question doesn't just test the truth. It helps the person become more self-aware. Because when you're brave enough to examine yourself from another person's point of view, that's when you start living more honestly. So if you want to push a conversation deeper into real, transformative territory, ask this next. If this happened again, do you think you'd respond any differently? Can you learn anything from yourself? It's late at night. The city feels like it's breathing slower. Two people sit side by side under soft yellow streetlights, the sound of cars fading into the distance, and a kind of closeness. Wrapped in silence. An old story suddenly comes back, a misunderstanding that once kept them from speaking for a whole week. No one's raising their voice, no yelling, but it's obvious both of them remember how much it hurt. You exhale, then ask, if that happened again, would you react differently? This is the moment, not for blame, but for reflection. Someone being real will take a breath. They'll pause. They'll remember the words they should have said, the silences they shouldn't have kept. They might say, yeah, this time I'd really listen. I wouldn't walk away the second things feel off. I'd stay and try to understand more. But someone making it up, they'll stand still. They'll say, there's nothing I'd do differently. I didn't do anything wrong. Seneca once said, while we teach, we learn. And in love, in mistakes, in how we react. Being mature doesn't mean never messing up. It means learning something from the mess you've made. I used to be the one who said, there's nothing to change. I thought that made me strong, but it was just stubbornness. I thought being consistent was the highest standard. But turns out, sometimes, It's change that helps someone stay. In therapy, a question like this isn't just meant to fix behavior. It measures how far someone's awareness has evolved. Someone telling the truth has lived through that experience. They don't just remember, they understand. They understand what went wrong. They understand why they were that way. And they know, if given the chance, they'd make a different choice. But someone faking it, they've got nothing to learn, because they were never really in it in the first place. So next time you want to know if someone's actually grown from their mistakes, or if they're just saying what sounds right, don't ask, "Why did you do that?" Ask, "If that happened again, would you respond differently?" Because in that answer, you'll see it clearly. Are they repeating themselves, or becoming someone better? And when your line of questions finally arrives at this one, you'll realize nobody needs to interrogate anybody. You just need to know how to ask the right question, and have enough patience to listen to the silence between the words. Because here's the truth. People who live honestly don't talk a lot, but when they do, you'll hear a piece of yourself in what they say. There are questions that seem harmless, but when asked at the right time, in the right place, and with the courage to truly listen, they don't just reveal the truth, they expose the essence of who we are, and the people we choose to trust. We've walked through 8 questions, like 8 quiet compasses, subtly cutting into logic, emotion, and self-awareness, from a simple story shared over dinner, to the way we react to an old misunderstanding on a quiet night. All of them served one purpose, not to assign blame, but to unlock the level of self-reflection, where all real growth begins. Peace is power. Silence is strength. Presence is everything. What Stoicism teaches isn't how to be cold. It teaches us how to stay grounded in a world full of performance, to reflect truth through calm. Epictetus once emphasized, know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly. Don't decorate, dig. Don't perform, live. You don't need to be perfect to start asking deeper questions. You just need courage. The courage to live deliberately. The courage to face yourself through the tiniest of everyday stories. You're not walking this path alone. If anything you heard today made you see a part of yourself more clearly, or reminded you of someone who needs to be understood a little more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This isn't just a place to learn. This is a space for us to walk together, to listen deeply, and to grow together. Because at the end of the day, we all carry invisible battles. Let's carry each other. I'll see you in the next video, where we won't just listen. We'll think deeper. Stoic Seeds, where strength meets self-mastery.